The following is a paid program. Talk 103.7 WTIP and Cable Channel 7 welcome you into Financially Speaking with Jim Taunton. Find us live on radio, TV, the IBX Media app, and on YouTube. Just search Financially Speaking NC or get the link at WTIPFM.com. The opinions expressed in this show are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities and investment advisory services are offered through Genoa Wealth Management Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Now, here's your host for Financially Speaking, certified financial advisor, Jim Taunton.
And welcome to Financially Speaking. Jim Taunton here. I am your host for the next 30 minutes, and glad you joined me, and I know you'll be glad as well. We have, I'm not seeing him on the screen now, Mr. Producer. Does that mean he's not? There he is. There, he's back. Like a poltergeist. We are so fortunate to have Louis Navellier on the program again. He was on about a month ago, and to be honest, I thought it'd be months, before I'd even try to have him back on. But the times we're in are so tumultuous, and I know that people, one that is actually in the know. I mean, localized advisors like myself, we rely on people like Louis to give us information. And what I try to do is form a consensus of opinions of all these people I'm on webcast with and listen to and on phone calls with, conference calls and whatnot. And I just threw all that in the trash can. I said, well, let's just talk to Louis. He can tell us what's going on. We're going to forego all of the commercial breaks and give him all of the time. Louis, thank you for coming back on.
It's an honor to be here.
And Louis, in addition to all of his credentials and plaudits, which we listed last week or last time he was on, he has authored a book, The Sacred Truths, which is on the bestseller list. Of course it is. It's a great read. And we have one more to give away. I had 4 books, actually, and I've given away 3. And I won't do it on this program, but when you're not here, I'll give your book away to someone that wants to have it. So. Louis, man, I'm a grizzled veteran. I've done this for 45 years. I've handled clients' money through 6 bear markets and 6 recessions. Mm-hmm. So there's not a whole lot that surprises me, but there is a lot going on. And one of the things that's going on is, we have the value of the dollar going down, and some have been a proponent of the idea that a weaker dollar is actually better because it makes our goods and services cheaper to people abroad. Do you agree with that or not?
No, that's true. But then a strong dollar helps squelch deflation. So, actually creates deflation. It lowers the cost of goods. So, long term, you want a strong dollar. Short term, Trump definitely wants to weaken the dollar. But if he weakens the dollar, then the bond vigilantes, these big institutional investors, stop buying the treasuries, and then that's why he had to pull that 90-day suspension. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, had a little chat with him and told him in a nice way he's not in charge anymore. They are. Mm-hmm. So they did the 90-day suspension. We had some successful 10 and 30-year bond auctions. Since then, bond yields have meandered lower. Obviously, the ECB cut rates today, so that was good. 7th straight cut, and they probably got another 3 coming. And our rates will be coming down, but we'll always be the last to cut. And that should strengthen the dollar, just that we'll be dragging our feet.
I have heard you have conversations with other individuals and on financial shows talk about the bond vigilantes. Is that actually a concerted effort between bond investors to act as a unit to apply pressure to bond prices, or not? I mean, is it just a reaction of a lot of bond investors to what's going on?
Well, apparently they are real and they're international. Ed Yardeni cloned the phrase, but Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, is the guy that squeezed the Bank of England many years ago when they had a currency peg, and then he made over $1 billion for Soros because the Bank of England had unwind that peg. And I'm sure glad we got Scott Bessent in charge right now, because he seems to be the coolest head around, and he's trying to calm investors. And then Howard Lutnick, of course, our Commerce Secretary, his firm Cantor Fitzgerald dominates Treasury trading. So between those two, Trump's got a lot of advisors, and apparently listen to him. And that's why they did the 90-day suspension.
So what do you think is going to happen after the 90 days?
Well, right now, everybody's sucking up to Trump. They're trying to get rid of their tariffs, and that's wonderful. So we're getting closer to free trade. These are the reciprocal tariffs. I want to make clear that there is a 10% tariff across the board that he imposed, and I think that's mostly to tax the underground economy in America, because we do have huge cash economies in this country. And if you don't put a national sales tax or VAT tax, you can't get them. So I think that's what he did. But I'm hoping we won't feel that, because the dollar will get its mojo back and mask a lot of that. But the reciprocal tariffs, everybody's been caving, except for China. 130 countries have apparently caved. Israel set the standard. Japan is close to a deal right now. I think the problem is dropping your trade barriers isn't enough for Trump. In addition to jumping the trade barriers, then he says, well, what are you going to buy from America? So he's selling oil, he's selling food items. It's fascinating. We've been a net importer of food in the past 3 years. As big as a bread basket as we are now a net food importer, mostly from Mexico. And he just slapped almost a 21% tariff on their tomatoes and stuff.
Yeah. Have you or someone done a calculation to determine exactly what 10% tariffs equate to in an income tax rate reduction? I mean, if they were equal?
That's compound complex.
Yes.
Again, I'm hoping the dollar gets its mojo back. And if the dollar goes up 10%, we won't even notice that 10%. Mm-hmm. But the reciprocal tariffs are the tit-for-tat tariffs. We're treating them like they treat us. And obviously it's worked for everybody except China. That's a whole other story right now. But, they are planning to pass tax cuts. So no taxes on Social Security, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. However, when they do this, they have to reconcile it. And the last time they reconciled it, I don't know if you remember, Christine Sinema was the Arizona senator. She's not a senator anymore. She threw out the carry trade on hedge funds, that we were going to start taxing hedge funds. She threw that out because I guess she's got friends in high places. And they did a 1% tax on stock buybacks. So we have to do this. We have to sit there together, figure out we're going to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And they keep floating the idea they're going to jack the tax rate up for the upper bracket. And I would not be surprised if Trump does that. He loves to steal the argument from the other side. Mm-hmm. So if you look at what he's doing now, he's already got the longshoremen. He's already got the Teamsters. Now he's got the UAW. He's got Sean Fenn, who of the UAW, who hated him and campaigned against him, now loves him. He's got Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, in the White House, approving what he's doing. And so he loves to steal the other side's argument. And I can just see Trump wanting to say, hey, I raised the taxes on the billionaires. So, so that it takes that argument away from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC.
Right.
And so don't be surprised if that happens. It's supposed to be $1 million or higher. So for everybody who makes less than $1 million, don't stress about it too much.
Right. Yeah, the Republican Party has become the populist party, which is quite a switch.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. You know, they got the men. They, you know, it's they got the married women. They got the men. They got made huge inroads with a lot of minorities. Hispanics are essentially Republican now. You know, they're very pro-family or hardworking people. So that's wonderful. And it's gotten to be very interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm just amazed, like most of us are. You know, they're rolling this stuff out just to keep us entertained. It's
Right.
never going to end. I think it's scripted.
Yeah, I think the tariffs are ultimately going to settle at 10 for most countries. And you know, when he put the tariffs on Mexico and Canada, you know, I winced a little bit, like everyone else. And thank goodness he didn't follow through with the large tariffs on Great Britain. But you know, China's another story. I think we all understand that China has used and abused the United States over the years in various ways. Too many to talk about on the program here. So if we had some targeted tariffs that were longer term on China, I'm okay with that, except, like you, I'm an investor in NVIDIA, and he has barred their chips that they especially created for China that are not quite as good as the more powerful chips that they're selling everywhere else. But now they can't sell those, and they had to take close to a $5 billion write-off, or will. So where's NVIDIA going? You know, if we have long-term tariffs on China and the bar of the chips remains in place, is NVIDIA going to be okay?
Yeah, it's going to be fine. But a little history of these special chips for China. What the first reiteration of this is the Biden administration made NVIDIA slow down their bus speed. So it's hard to explain, but the first chip is actually the same as the chips we get, but the bus is like the freeway, how fast you can transfer data. And then the Biden administration said, no, that's not enough. You got to put some more restrictions on it. So NVIDIA hemmed and hawed and did it. And NVIDIA doesn't make a lot of money on those Chinese chips. And so it's almost like good riddance. And now they can divert their resources to more profitable chips.
Okay.
So I think it's okay. I mean, he knows Jensen. Jensen committed to invest $100 billion in America. So he called him his friend today when he was with Prime Minister Maloney at the news conference. So I'm not too worried about it. The Wall Street Journal did a great article on NVIDIA's explosive sales growth and an impressive chart there. And they also showed the business with China was growing, but China is not a significant part of their business.
All right. And you know, the stereotype, Louis, for Asians is that they're incredibly smart. And you would think that they would either at this point have been able to create their own chips, or they could take the NVIDIA chips that had been dumbed down and bring them back up to the same specs as all the other chips. But evidently, the United States is way ahead technologically.
Well, yeah, they don't have the lithography equipment that ASML makes. And so when you go to the real high-end stuff, you have to have that ASML equipment, and that's got export restrictions on it as well. So yeah, China can do dumb chips, but they can't do the advanced GPUs, and that's their conundrum. And and as far as being smart, you know, Jensen Huang of NVIDIA went to University of Oregon State when he was 16 years old. came to the country when from Taiwan when he was 8, and there were 100 and I think 57 people in the electrical engineering class. Only 3 were women, and he was doing the homework for a lot of the other kids, helping them. And his eventual wife was one of those students, but he couldn't ask her out until he got a little older, because I guess when he went to Oregon State, even though he was 16, he looked like he was 12. So it took him a couple of years of helping her with the homework, and then maybe hitting puberty, he could ask her out. Yeah.
Well, that's some history I did not know. That's interesting.
That's right.
Yeah,
and then she buys all leather jackets, because he wears leather because he itches.
Oh, really? Yeah, he's I think the top CEO around. The only one that's close is probably Elon Musk, and since he is distracted now by his duties with the administration, he's probably dropped down a little bit. But
and Prime Minister Maloney, he and her. You just Google the pictures of Maloney and Musk. There's love there. So, but Elon loves a lot of women, so it's
gotcha.
It's a little confusing, but they do love each other.
Louis, I'm gonna just kind of shut up for the remainder of the program. We got another 14 minutes or so, and just will you talk about where you think we're going with all of this? Where the tariffs going, where the market's going, where interest rates are going. Where are we going to settle on this?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the April 9th. What Trump did on Truth Social, he told everybody to buy, all caps, 3 exclamation points. Adam Schiff wants him to be indicted for insider trading. But that rally on the 9th was the biggest rally I've seen in my lifetime. And then what's interesting is this week, he announced he's getting in the money management business through funds that follow his Make America Great agenda. They're using a sub-advisor. They'll be doing managed accounts at Schwab. And his family, Eric and Eric's wife and Don Jr., bought a big interest in Salem, which is a public company. They have religious right radio shows across the country. And they also own Eagle Publishing, which is a newsletter outfit. One of my editors writes for them. But another editor, Mark Skousen, does Freedom Fest and things. So this week, Trump's in my business. He does managed accounts, and he does investment newsletters. And I find that very interesting, okay? He's got to be a little bit more careful as he disseminates information, because obviously they have to be registered with the SEC to be in the investment management business. And but Truth Social's a great tip sheet, and I think you have to use it now, because we don't know when he's going to throw another big bomb out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought presidents had to put all their assets in a blind trust and have a clear.
But Trump is selling watches, and one of them's $100,000. It looks like a gold Rolex, and it's got a turbulent face, and so it's obviously Swiss mechanics. And when he put the reciprocal tariffs on Switzerland, I says, "Why would you do that? You're in the watch business."
Yeah.
And then, of course, he's got his gold tennis shoes. They're only like $495. So I don't know if they're made in Vietnam like the other tennis shoes, but apparently Vietnam worked out a deal. And then he sells cologne. He's a busy person,
Yes.
And then Truth Social is Donald J. Trump is a ticker symbol, and that's worth over $4 billion. They're not making money. And then he has a friend, Chris Ruddy of Newsmax. They went public and shot up like a meme stock, and then dropped 77% the other day. And I was dealing with some Mar-a-Lago members that had the stock. It wasn't restricted. So I was telling them how to sell it. Like, better put a limit order above where it is now, because I wouldn't sell this thing on a market order. But, but in the meantime, Chris Reddy's got Newsmax got a market cap of $17 billion. DJT's over $4 billion, and I'm surprised he didn't buy my publisher. It would have got a better deal. We're public.
Yeah. Now you're a neighbor of his, right? Kind of, sort of.
Well, Mar-a-Lago's 8 miles up the road. Yeah, I live in a little town called Mamalapan, and Larry Ellison's down the street, and then between me and Larry, there's Sean Hannity bought a nice home, and up the street is Tony Robbins, and we have a lot of famous people. But yeah, this area is one big construction zone.
And then there's Louis.
We've been here a long time. We set the record like 27 years ago, and now what they build here is ostentatious. The dirt is so expensive; they're forced to build mausoleums, and so yeah, I'll have one of the poorest homes here soon. Even though I set the record 27
you're still
years.
doing all right. You know what? You have the same view they do, though, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I probably got a better one. Not all the homes here have ocean views. Sean's on the intercoastal side. Yeah, he has a tunnel to a guest house on the ocean. We're on the ocean. We have a pool. My neighbor just built next to me, and they put the house so far out they left no room for the pool, so they're freaking out. And so you do have to engineer everything right.
Yeah.
The house south of me was, oh my God, a Nigerian fertilizer guy, and they spent way too much money building that home. It looks like a government building. It's not going to sell very well, but it's 8 years to build homes here now. I mean, that's a long time to have a project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Louis, your best guess. Come December 31st, is the market? Certainly, the market will be higher than it is now, but will it be higher than it was before this Trump slump?
Oh yeah, I mean the S&P should be at least 18% higher. I'm sure I'll be 32 to 40% higher. I've got much stronger earnings than S&P, but the S&P's got double-digit earnings growth the remainder of the year. I've got, much stronger sales and earnings, and I don't pay premium P ratios. One of my biggest stocks, Lilly, took off today. That was on a GLP-1 drug trial. But the main thing people should be aware is they'll be cutting interest rates because the whole world's in recession. China's got all kinds of horrible economic problems. They got deflation over there. The Financial Times talked about them devaluing their currency. They're a mess. And they got an authoritarian leader who's doesn't got a lot of staff, a lot of depth. And so we'll see what happens to China, but it doesn't look good. It looks like they're the new Japan. We'll have rates at or near zero for 20 plus years. But because Mexico's in recession, so is Canada, Britain, France, and Germany. They're all going to be cutting rates. And, there's something called USMCA, and we'll renegotiate that next year. It was negotiated in Trump's first term. But, there's supposed to be some relief on the auto tariffs. Trump has hinted at it, but we haven't seen it yet. And I hope they deal with that because they really have screwed up commerce, I thought he was going to give Britain a special deal because we run a surplus with Britain. And I thought he was going to put Britain against the EU to say, look, well, we have a surplus with Britain, we don't with you, so we'll be nice to them. Sorry, you're out of luck. But it's not quite how it went down. So, but Britain had a pretty big delegation, and I'm sure they'll get a good deal. But it's the whole world is in a recession, and I think the U.S. and India have to lead the way, and the entire world is shrinking population-wise. They just got too darn old, and so a lot of these countries get a lot of immigrants, but they're not assimilating them. They're not adding to their GDP. And GDP is interesting because it might be down the first quarter, but it's only down because of the dumping of gold. Common gold reserves were up 43% in January, 25% in February, and also the dumping of goods. Now, CPI has been down the last 2 months. Oil's down. Yet Powell and other Fed officials are talking about, well, we're waiting to see the inflation from tariffs. There's no inflation right now, so there's deflation. So So I think they better get their butt in gear, start cutting rates, and of course, Trump's getting very frustrated with Powell.
Is he going to fire him?
I don't think he has the authority to fire him. But he called him political today with Maloney. Because the Fed loves to wait and see the data, and now they're not looking at it. They're imagining things that haven't happened. So I think unicorns are cute, but I'm not going to base my investment decisions based on fantasy. And I think some of the Fed officials are living in a fantasy world, and I feel I really feel they're making a mistake. So they better cut in May, and they better keep cutting. Well, they should have 4 cuts this year. CNBC set up to 5, but and our consumer spending up a storm. We saw the retail sales in March were the best in 2 years, up 1.4%, and almost all categories except 2 were up. And then the one was down because it was gas prices.
And you firmly believe the Fed will cut in May?
They better. If they don't, I would definitely get rid of a lot of them. There were some people nominated to the Federal Market Committee that had no experience whatsoever. There were DEI hires. So I've been watching her. She just kind of goes with the consensus. But if you go back to that last dot plot, they were planning to cut a couple times this year. But now market rates have come down, so they should be cutting up to 4. And now the whole collapse of the economic system in Europe is interesting. I got a lot of grief for predicting 4 rate cuts early in the year, and I've been vindicated because market rates came down. But I do always have one outrageous prediction, and so after I was right on the 4 rate cuts, my new outrageous prediction is I said Italy could become our 51st state. There's a really good chance the EU is going to break up. Right. The EU is a monetary currency union, but Brussels is out of control right now. Macron's out of control. The guy that led the presidential runoff in Romania was disqualified. Marie Le Pen, who controls the French parliament, has been disqualified. They got one of Maloney's lieutenants. They won't let her. The courts won't let her deport migrants, even though she ran on that. They just got rid of 2 conservative radio stations in Poland. There's an election coming up. So Macron and Ursula, who runs from Brussels, they're meddling. This is not. When you create a monetary union and to share a currency and get some economies of scale, didn't mean we were going to sign up for a political union. So where Brussels runs everything. Just look what they've done to Germany. Germany has to be all electric by 2035. They don't make money on those cars. So just come over to America and start building them here. In fact, Trump already said he'll give the workers work visas. You know what they were doing this week? They were banning carbon fiber. They finally had some common sense. Everybody complained. So, that's cars, aerospace. Yeah. We were joking with bicycles. There are a lot of bicycle makers in Europe. We were joking that how's the DP World golf tour? Are they going to have to go back to persimmon and steel shafts? You know what I mean? It's just, you can't have the French Open if you can't have carbon fiber rackets. It's just, it was nuts. So,
Louis,
they have a problem.
Ask you one last thing. We got about a minute, maybe a little less. Somebody in the administration, may have been Trump himself, intimated that China was just about ready to come to the table, which if that happens, then the market will go crazy. What do you think? And I've got music in my ear. You got about 20 seconds.
That's great news. I have no insight into that. That would be wonderful news.
Yeah. All right.
Big rally.
Louis, thank you so much. I won't bother you again for a while, but appreciate you coming back on. Enjoy the view.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. All right. This is Jim Taunton helping you, as always, make all of your financial decisions good ones. Good night, everybody.